Hello and welcome to episode 18 of DataCube's free online training. Episode 18 is still on topic of Google Data Studio, and last week we spoke about the standard visuals, the visuals that are built into Google Data Studio, but this week we're going to take a look at some of the community visualizations that are available to us as Data Studio users. We're going to have a quick play around. I'm going to show you some of my favorites. And also some things you need to consider to make them work and for them to work with other visuals that you're using. So stay tuned and we'll go and have a look at that now. We're back in Google Data Studio. So if you can see any dogs barking in the background, not sure what's going on there. So episode 18, community visuals. This is looking a bit like a mess, but it will all hopefully start to make sense. Now, the first thing we should talk about is the community visuals themselves. So when we normally want to add a chart, we can just press the big add a chart button, but you may have noticed the icon to the right, community visualizations and components. If we click on that, we get this pop-up of the community visualizations, and if you click on explore more, it will come up and you'll be able to scroll through all the current ones that are available. Now you may recognize some of the names here. So for example, the Analytics Buddy or Supermetrics. So we spoke about Supermetrics, which have made quite a few of these throughout here. We spoke about them in terms of using them as a way of getting external data sources that aren't already built into Data Studio. There's quite a lot here that we can scroll through. I've picked out a few favorites today that I've been using and show you. So we're not going to go through all of them, so it'll take hours. But some of them that I haven't gone through that are worth a look at if you're looking at mapping, that hexbin map, the stats analyzer. I think in my first impressions, it was kind of trying to oversimplify stats. And trying to find out the factors that allow for growth or income, for example. So maybe look deeper into that before you draw on some conclusions. The chord diagram can be really easy for comparing relationships between dimensions. Waterfall we spoke about in Power BI, very useful. Seeing how things build up or subtract over time, so worth looking at that. The range slider is pretty useful, and the chloropleth map as well, although obviously being Google we can use Google Maps in here, but this is a good way of using area mapping and sort of almost rivals Tableau a little bit. I never got on well with many of the mapping solutions in Power BI, which you can see in one of the episodes where we speak about, I think it was episode 2 of visuals in Power BI. Anyway, let's concentrate on Data Studio. The first thing you need to do though, however, to allow for these visuals is go to your data source and make sure up here community visualization access is turned on. So that will be automatically turned off when you import or connect up to a data source. So make sure that is on if you want to be using any of these visuals. Now the first one I've had is this. It is called Date Picker. Now this one allows you to filter on dates in a kind of aesthetic way, choosing chunks of time. Now it is currently August, but the data only goes up to July, so it doesn't allow us to click on any of these, which is quite nice, and you can set the colours of these and the year. So for example, if I only want to look at data in January, you can see how it's just filtered down to January. There's my sum of value, there's a scorecard there, and it allows a multi-selector, so you can build these up or untick certain ones. So if we don't want March, we can turn that back to orange, which means it's off. We can add that back in. So this is quite a handy one. You can also select the years. If you had multiple years, this only has 1 year. So it pulls out years and then months, which is quite a neat trick. So this is just a standard table standard line chart and a standard scorecard here, but I've got some other ones I want to show you. So next up is this search box, and now that is this search box by Romain Villiard, and this is pretty cool sort of way of using natural language in Data Studio. So what you can actually do is search. So this I've set up against product for my grocery shop. So as an example, if I start writing spinach in here, you can see it's filtered down to that. It's pretty neat. So if I type in B, it will only show me items with a B in, sort of wildcard search. LE will just be lentils, lettuce, and then celery as well, because there's an LE in that. So that's pretty neat. Sort of natural language, not having to filter on drop downs if you know exactly what you're trying to filter for. That could be products, channels, whatever you might be, depending on your data. So like spinach and sprouts there. So I think that's pretty cool. The next one that is quite useful is this one here, which is the range slider, and I will show you that now. So this one I've set up against, I think it's value, yeah. So this is my total sales value, so pounds in this case. Now it will filter out the sum of each product against the value. So here in the Sinky, just kind of ignore the Sinky for now, but you can see the value on the right here. So if I put that at 100, it should filter out anything below that. So you can just drag the slider up, and there we go. So now I only have products with a total value of over 100. So if I went up to 216, for example, now I've only got the top ones there, and obviously I can use the other end. It's a bit like using a video editing trim bar. You select the sort of range that you want. So if I took it right down to 30 there, and you get under 30, and obviously you can move them both in tandem. So 129 to whatever this one was, 190 I think. Then I'll just get any that fit into that range, which is quite handy. I've noticed, as you can see here, sometimes the custom visuals are a little bit, not necessarily buggy, but a bit slow, and I get the blue Google loading bar a lot on the top, which is kind of annoying. But there we go. And then even though it's now working, it's still spinning around. I've noticed that consistently. So the next is the Sinky itself. Now this is a bad example just because of the data that exists there. But if I bump that up so we can actually see it in a bit more detail, it's always worth filtering to just the things you want to see, as it gets pretty messy. Sinky is good for flow, Sinky is good for journeys. It's sort of been built into things like Google Analytics. So I'm at my home page, how many people went to my contact page, how many people went to my just say it was a charity, how many people went to my donate page, that sort of thing. But here it's looking at value across, and we've got some duplicate values here, so you can see how they cross over, where the dupes in beetroot are higher than the second one in, or the first one in beetroot is higher than the second one in cauliflower. It shows how that sort of spins over, and it's just ranked them by value there. But that is great to have as an option in any sort of BI tool. Having a Sinky is really powerful. And the last one I wanted to talk about briefly are these three icons down here. Now I noticed there's a few sort of icon ones. One of them was where's it gone? So I'm going to speak about the mouse over tooltip. But there was also another one, which the data target card, I think it might be, which is basically a library of icons that you can use, so you don't have to import your own images, which can be quite handy. These ones are tooltips, and I think these are going to be really useful, especially if you just pop them in like a corner of a chart, made them nice and small. So let's do that quickly now with this icon here. So icon size, let's put that to 20, maybe 25, of course, with the original size. Just gonna make this a bit smaller. I'm going to bump that up here, and it can be a good way of showing, okay, what does this chart actually mean? Well, let's go and have a look. So I'm going to click on View, and now I'm in View, I can now hover over these. Now it's going a bit small, but since I already sized it, but I can show you on the other one. So this one I just typed in the tooltip, hello, hover over this one. This chart is really useful. So with these you have 3 options which are shown here. So one is the light bulb, so if you click on style, so we've got the light bulb information and the question mark, and it allows you to use it as a tooltip, and you can choose the font and the size, and you can type in, so if you were hovering over this chart, instead of having a big title, you could say value over time, and it then kind of helps people understand maybe what the chart is a bit more, or kind of you could give help to that, and you can obviously edit them, edit the background, show on hover, always show, that sort of thing. So if I were to hover over this one now, you can see value over time, this chart, really useful. So if I pop that back up here, so if you wanted to know what this chart meant in a bit more detail, you could just hover over that, value over time. Maybe you need something a bit more informative, but that's a decent example there. So I think these are some of my favourite custom visuals, so the search, the range, the Sinky, these icons, and the time bar filter there. But as I said, there's plenty more to have an explore with. Things to bear in mind, as I mentioned earlier, make sure custom visualizations are turned on for the data source you're using, which can be down here. The other thing worth doing about filters just in general as well, something that I didn't realise for a bit, and I thought, wow, these just aren't working, especially for these filters like these 3 here. To make sure once you've set them up, you scroll to the bottom and under interactions press apply filter. So if that's not selected, you can be clicking away and nothing is happening at all. So whereas if we go onto it, apply filter, back to view, we'll see those numbers will now change because it's turned on. So that's definitely another thing to bear in mind. There's 2 main things. As I said, many more in here, play around. The stats one take, I think, with a lot of pinch of salt. Sorry to them for me saying that. But there's some great ones here. As I said, they aren't standard ones, and it's a bit like in any BI tool, I think. So in Power BI, some of them are a little bit clunky to use. They may slow down the reporting a bit as well. So bear that in mind. If there is a standard one that does the job, looks good, I would stick with it. And these ones are sort of additional extras, but can be super useful and are well made. So thank you for that. Next week I'm actually going to be speaking about one of the custom visuals, but in a lot more detail, and that is something that everyone loves these days in the analytics industry, and that is, of course, the bar chart arrays. So these are made famous really by Flourish. If you haven't checked out Flourish, great website for building super interesting charts and visuals. So go and check that out if you haven't. And next week we're going to make some of these bar chart races in Data Studio. So tune in next week for that. Thank you very much.